Hey folks, I believe I'm live. I'm gonna try to get the Facebook stream coming up here. Hopefully it'll get me connected here momentarily, so I'll be able to track with y'all's comments and such. Good morning. Also, good to be with everyone today. Let's see here. Come on, Facebook. Anyway, in the interim, let me make sure I'm actually rolling here. Yep, I am. I'm good. I am going. Okay. Well, again, welcome. Sorry, I was a little bit of a clumsy beginning here, I guess, but that's okay. Yeah. So here we are, Worship Wednesday. As we begin, I'll just remind us of our memory verse for this week, John 10:10, which reads, "I came so that they could have life indeed, so that they could live life to the fullest." And I really appreciate that verse, especially as we're engaged in the Enneagram, in looking at the Enneagram together. One of the things that I really love about that verse and about the Enneagram in general is that it's really, it really is about that, about living a full life, living in fullness. Being made whole. And living out of that wholeness. So we're not segmented, we're not fractured, we're made whole, we're restored, we're renewed, we get to live into the fullness of who we are. So I know that everybody's been sharing about their own Enneagram journey, and so I'll do the same, so coming into Enneagram, let's see, for me, I came to Enneagram probably 6 years ago. Yeah, something like that. It was a year or two before I moved out here, and did it as part of a church staff, and so it was one of those where we did the test to get the personality typing thing, and then worked through it with a small group and with a coach for that, which I think is a great way to do it. I would say it's a useful tool for everybody, but it's really good to have somebody who knows what they're doing guide you through. Oh yeah, and if you didn't catch it, that's Ziva the doggo. She's sleeping up here. Yeah, that's the dog that I wrote the song about. That's Ziva, that song. Celia mentioned it this Monday, and I played it last week. But anyway, yeah. So I've really appreciated everyone's stories about Enneagram. My type, I'm the same type as Morgan. I'm a 5 on the Enneagram, and very, very much like Morgan, I actually have always tested as a 5, and it's never been anything I've objected to. It always made sense to me that I'm a 5. I'm like, oh yeah, that tracks. That feels right. I think I'm a 5. And so I think for me, it's been more of a process of figuring out what that means and what the different, how that works itself out, because Enneagram isn't really about, which we keep saying this, but it bears repeating, the Enneagram really isn't about saying this is the box in which we place you. Like I've if you work in churches or you're around churches long enough or whatever, you're going to wind up doing most of the personality tests, whether it's Myers-Briggs or that's the most popular one. DISC is another one. any of those kinds of things. And, I've found some value in them, but generally speaking, I haven't enjoyed them all that much, because they've been more about, here's like how you work and how you can get along with the other people that you work with, that kind of thing, which has value. But what I've really appreciated about the Enneagram in my life is that I've found it to be a really helpful tool for personal growth and development, for spiritual growth and development. And so again, one of the things that bears repeating is that Enneagram isn't about saying that I've got you figured out. It's not about saying about interpreting someone else's behavior or thinking that we've got a handle on who other people are because of their Enneagram type. It's more about understanding myself, understanding some of my core wounds, understanding some of my core motivations, understanding some of my core needs, and being able to say like, oh, okay, that makes sense with how I act in these contexts, in these situations. And then it gives us the ability to sort of look at ourselves and say, oh, okay, so when I'm in a situation like this, maybe it's on a great day, or maybe it's in a really tough place, but I understand better how my actions, when they look like this, are really helping me, or how my actions, when they look like that, are really hurting me, or they're not working for me. Excuse me, I'm going to drink coffee during all of these, so I hope that's okay with everybody. But it helps us understand ourselves and gives us some tools for being able to grow and develop as just human beings, but also as people who are trying to follow Jesus and trying to be more like who Jesus is. More like, well, a better way to put it is more like who Jesus would be if he were us. Because one of the things about the Enneagram is that the 9 types are present in everyone. So there's none of us that we're just one type. We have a core style, but the truth is, like, in our wholeness, in our being made whole, in our being healed, in our experiencing the restorative power of God, we actually find that all of these different types are expressed in us, through us. Yeah. So Enneagram is really about that more than anything. And yeah. And it's interesting too, because, listening to like Morgan talk about her experience of being a 5 on the Enneagram is there's a lot about what she shared that I really resonate with, and some things that I'm like, well, that not so much. But that's one of the great things, like kind of like Aaron was saying in the sermon, that like, you could think about a type as a color, but then there are all these diverse shades within that color. So like, even though Morgan and I are the same type on the Enneagram, our experiences of what it's like to be a 5 are different in a lot of ways. And that's like one of the really cool things, is that it's not saying this is, these are the fine parameters on who you are. And this is exactly how life works for you. It's more saying, helping you understand how you inhabit the world, and giving you tools to do that more fully, more completely, more holistically. And so I find it to be a really, it's been my favorite kind of personality sort of thing I've ever used. And I've actually found it to be really beneficial in my life over the last 5 or 6 years. And I've it's probably been one of the biggest like standalone tools for me in thinking through, why I do what I do, understanding some of my own story and history, understanding how I experience big moments in life, what have you. Anyway, it's just been a really beneficial tool for me. And I often am, because it's one of my favorite mugs, but I'm drinking out of my 10,000 Fathers mug this morning, my 10K Daddy mug this morning. And part of what I did with 10,000 Fathers Worship School was an Enneagram workshop, which was great. Again, it's not the only one I've ever done, but that's another space where growth in understanding ourselves and becoming more like Jesus is a hugely important part of what we did, and using the Enneagram as a tool to explore that was really important. So again, our memory verse for this week says, "I came so that they could have life, indeed so that they could live life to the fullest." Again, Enneagram is kind of really about living a full life, of understanding some of the boundaries that we put on ourselves, and being able to see them and being able to come out of them. And so, again, as we dive into this, think about understanding yourself. Think about understanding the ways that Jesus is at work in your own heart, in your own life, and understanding maybe even some of the places where like you have been hurt since you were a little kid. Some of the things that you needed as a little one and you didn't get, and that's just going to be part of your story, but that's not where it has to stay. That's not where you have to stay, where any of us has to stay, that we can experience restoration, that we can experience a wholeness and a fullness in life. One of the songs I wanted to share, because it's just a good song, and it's a new one for us. We're going to be doing it this weekend in our live stream services, and I'm going to sing it for us, but don't worry, when it comes to the weekend, y'all get to listen to Jenny Wickett lead this one. So you'll be better off later. You'll be better off this weekend when you get to hear Jenny lead it. But for us, I thought I'd give us a chance to learn it a little bit. And it's called Goodness of God. I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. Seems like Ziva's waking up a little bit. You know, for a good song, she'll wake up maybe. It's probably traffic, actually. I have one more song picked out for us today. And I picked it because as I was reading through the text for the meditation moment today, it was interesting reading through it. The Gospel of John is such an interesting book. It's probably my favorite. It's probably my favorite book in the Bible. I just find it really interesting. I've taken a couple classes on it in college and seminary and all that stuff. And you know, it's just a really fascinating book of the Bible to me. And one of the things that's so interesting as I was reading through is how Jesus is so provocative in this gospel. And granted, like the text is mostly just chapter 8, and you see this like this Jesus being who he is, and people responding in an antagonistic way is kind of the MO of that chapter. That's sort of what's going on. And that happens a lot throughout the Gospel of John, that simply Jesus's presence seems to evoke a response in people. And that how people respond when they encounter Jesus in the fullness of himself tells us a lot about what's going on inside their hearts. And I think that there's a sense in which like the Enneagram is a tool for saying like, I want to be aware of what's going on in my heart. I want to be aware of what's going on inside of myself so that I can offer the fullness of myself to Jesus, that I can offer the fullness of myself to God, because God deserves our full self. And so I think that this song I've really appreciated because it feels like a really genuine prayer to me. One of the most genuine prayers that I could sing. And maybe you'll feel the same way, but this song is called Come and Tear Down the Walls. Okay. All right. Ziva doesn't like that song, I guess. That's okay. But yeah, so this song's called Come and Tear Down the Walls, and it's an invitation for God to come into our hearts and continue to work to remove the barriers, to remove the walls that are in our heart. So let's sing "Come and Tear Down the Walls." Come and tear down the walls I built up, every wall I built up, every wall I built up. 'Cause you deserve every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart. Come and tear down the walls I build up, every wall I build up, every wall I build up. 'Cause you deserve every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart. And Lord, I'm trusting that you are a faithful Father, and all that you have, it is good. You're a generous giver, your love's like no other. Won't you come and break through to me over and over and over again? I'm bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, you're drawing me in, as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Over and over and over again, I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, you're drawing me in, as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Come and tear down the walls I built up, every wall I built up, every wall I built up. 'Cause you deserve every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart. Amen. Well, that's my prayer for us, that we would have an openness to God, that we would be willing to let our defenses down, that we would be willing to invite God to continue to come into our hearts and to tear down the places that we're building up walls, that we're closing ourselves in, that we're closing out the love of God, that we're closing out the love of others, that we might be brave enough, that we might be courageous enough to be vulnerable with God and with one another, to allow the fullness of God's light and the fullness of God's love to come in, to transform our hearts, to illuminate all of the places that all of the things within us that are truly beautiful, all of the things within us that are wounded, because all of that's in there. And that's what we have to offer to God, and that's what we have to offer to one another. And I know that's like a lifelong journey that I'm on. And so I sing that as a prayer to ask God to come in and by the power of the Holy Spirit to affect a lot of that change within me. I want to participate in that, but I believe that, we're not called to just do it on our own, and to make up the difference by ourselves, but to put our trust in what God can do, is doing, will do, has done, right? All the tenses. So I hope that you have a lovely day. I hope that for myself and for every one of us, that we can be open and continue to meet the day, continue to meet the world, continue to meet one another with the fullness of our hearts. So, yeah. All right. We'll go in peace, serve God. We'll see y'all soon.